Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this program discussing the TL1 Mentored Career Development Grant from the Center for Clinical and Translational Science. My name is Stuart Hobbs, and I'm the program manager for the TL1 grant. And so I run the program, ably assisted by the faculty directors, the TL1 director, Jenny Baumgartner, professor in the Department of Surgery, and the co-director, Lawrence Kirshner, professor in the College of Medicine. So I want to welcome you all today, and glad for your interest in this program. So the session today I want to talk a little bit about the Center for Clinical and Translational Science, its context in the NIH firmament, then talk particularly about, obviously, the TL1 grant, talk about eligibility for it, the benefits of it, go through the application process with how to write a good application, talk about how it will be evaluated, and as we go along, I will pause for questions and try and keep an eye on the chat if you have questions that you are offering there. And then we should be finished with the formal part of the program with plenty of time for a question and answer session. So first of all, who are we? Well, the Center for Clinical and Translational Science at Ohio State is one of approximately 60 of these centers in the United States that are funded by the Clinical and Translational Science Award Program, which is part of the National Center for Advancing Translational Science, one of the newest of the centers and institutes at the National Institutes of Health. The National Center for Advancing Clinical and Translational Science, or NCATS as we call it, was founded some 8 to 10 years ago in response to the problem that one science journalist identified as crossing the valley of death. The valley of death being this space between clinicians or researchers in the lab or the clinic identifying potential solutions to human disease or cures to human disease or diagnostics, and then getting that over to the patients who actually could benefit. And as this illustration indicates, that it can cost $2 million or more, even considerably more, to cross that bridge, and it can take cases some drug development 18 years and sometimes never. So NCATS was created by the NIH as a mechanism to address this issue. This issue really of translation, the multi-step process of turning observations in the lab, the clinic, or the community into interventions that improve people's lives across a series of interventions, from diagnostics to behavioral changes. And so NCATS accomplishes this through a variety of mechanisms, but training people in clinical and translational research is a key part of that. And obviously wanting to reach people at the predoctoral and postdoctoral stage early in their careers to give them the skills they need to effectively conduct clinical and translational research. So the TL1 is part of a family of T awards, training grants for graduate, predoctoral, and postdoctoral students from the NIH. The TL1 is an institutional T award. Many of you are probably familiar with T32s. There's a number of T32 awards here at OSU. TL1 is just the T32 that's funded by NCATS. But it has a particular focus, as most T awards do. This focus is for investigators who are committed to conduct either patient-oriented or translational research. And again, that goal is to prepare you for a successful clinical and translational research career. I do want to pause and a little bit and give some definitions here. Important to know what clinical research is, that it is one of three things here: patient-oriented research, that research conducted with human subjects or material of human origin. And it can include the studies of human disease or therapeutic interventions. It can include clinical trials or development of new technologies. That can also be epidemiological and behavioral studies, and also outcomes research and health services research. So that's the broader clinical research that the TL1 is focused on funding. And there's also translational research. And it's usually described as a spectrum from T1, this kind of transition to humans research, all the way up to population health at the T4 end. So the focus of the TL1 Award is not on what's sometimes called T0, very basic scientific research. That does not necessarily, that doesn't mean that we don't fund research that's really focused in animals, for example, but that it's very clear what the translational impact is, what the clinical impact is. And it can certainly be sort of like, for example, proof of concept studies that might involve animal research. And that is why the application asks you to kind of explain where your research fits in this whole, in terms of clinical research and in terms of translational research, so that you can make the case for why your research fits in the clinical and translational research spectrum that this award can fund. So are there any questions on any of this content so far? Well, let's continue to move forward in terms of eligibility. Based on NIH rules, you have to be a US citizen, a non-citizen national, or be a permanent resident to receive this award. Beyond that, you must be enrolled in a program leading to a PhD in a clinical research related doctoral degree program, or in a combined doctoral level professional degree, you're looking at MD, PhD, or MD, MPH, or something along those lines. We also want you to be post-candidacy, or at least to have a candidacy exam scheduled before the August 15th, 2021 start date for the award. And we ask about your candidacy exam in the application. In terms of receiving a postdoc, you must have received some kind of doctoral degree by the time of the appointment. This is a full-time appointment, so it provides a stipend support at the NIH allowed level, although actually some departments, the NIH level is lower than what's offered at Ohio State, in which case departments typically make up the difference. For postdocs, there's a mandated salary scale, stipend scale from the NIH that is followed. Then there's also a small amount of research fund and a little bit of travel money, a little bit more research fund and travel for the postdocs. And then there's for the predoctoral students, tuition and fee waiver award granted to you as a TL1 trainee. The award is for up to 2 years, and so your training and research plan should reflect that timeline, unless you are specifically applying just to be there for a year, in which case you should then have a 1-year timeline to make that clear. Your progress throughout the training program is monitored by program faculty, and you're officially appointed to the position by the Executive Committee of the Center for Clinical and Translational Science. And so your second year reappointment is based on the progress during the course of the year and making a brief oral report to the Executive Committee at the end of the first year. So as to say that it's just not an automatic rollover to a second year. We've never had anyone who was working on a 2-year TL1 not be renewed because they've always done the work they said they were supposed to do. So as long as you are, carrying out your project, not just taking your stipend and going off to Tahiti, you should be fine and, proceed to your second year. But again, it's possible to apply just for a 1-year TL1 as well. The CCTS offers a variety of research services that can help you in the carrying out of your project, and you can follow that web address to access a menu of those services. And I will be making these slides available to you after the program, by the way, so that you can have all this information. And if you haven't already, you should become a member of the CCTS. You just go to our webpage and you click on that Become a Member button and just supply your name and email address. And I think we have a couple of choices how many newsletters you would like to receive. That way you can keep up with various training programs, various resources, and from the CCTS and from other institutions, from the NIH, and also a whole variety of opportunities that you can learn about by becoming a member and receiving our regular communications. I did want to highlight that one of the services that we offer are regular consultations with the Center for Biostatistics. Actually, used to be there were open house hours. You could walk in and meet with a biostatistician. Obviously, with COVID, that is not taking place now, but you can request a consultation from a biostatistician using their request form at the Center for Biostatistics and consult with someone. I mention this because it's very important to have some biostatistical consultation on your research in terms of power size, rigor, and reproducibility. Many departments and programs have that kind of built into it, and if that's the case where you are, that is excellent. But if you would not don't have ready access to biostatistical support, I would recommend that you take advantage of this opportunity. Further benefits of the TL1 program, we have a monthly Lunch and Learn series that covers a variety of topics, not only scientific ones and research related, but also on career development issues. And they're currently held the first Tuesday of each month at noon on Zoom. So actually, we provide learning. You have to provide your own lunch for the time being. But I hope and expect eventually to be returning to be able to provide you with some pizza or salad during the noon hour. There's also a foundational course sequence that all TL1 trainees take. 2 courses through the College of Public Health. They're taught by Dr. Phil Binkley, a cardiologist in the College of Medicine. Basic principles of clinical and translational science and conducting and communicating research in clinical and translational science. We also fund TL1 trainees to attend the annual meeting of the Association of Clinical and Translational Science, which is typically held in Washington, D.C. in mid-April, sometimes late October, early April. I mean, late March, early April. And they have a lot of special programs specifically designed for TL1 trainees, including some mentoring opportunities, participating in a mock study section. There's a luncheon program and various other content. Also a chance to present your research in the poster session as well. Then the TL1 also requires you to develop your own individualized career development plan and mentorship plan. And so you benefit from having those as well. We also ask for the predoctoral students who are not in a specifically kind of clinical translational degree program to get the graduate interdisciplinary specialization in biomedical, clinical, and translational science. Graduate interdisciplinary specializations, GISs, are created by the graduate school, and they're essentially minors to a PhD program. And so there are particular rules from the graduate school. It has to be 10 hours minimum, no more than 20, with 9 credit hours taken outside of the student's home program. And there are 5 courses required. That first of the core CCTS courses, and then a course from each of 4 skills areas, which are all outlined in the appendix to the RFA, which has a part about the GIS. Courses you've already taken as part of your PhD program can count toward the GIS, and there's usually, most people have had a couple of courses that do that. One of the advantages of this program is it does get you to take courses outside your own department. One recent TL1 fundee had all of the courses that he or she had taken really in the home department. And so this really is broadening their education by having to take a couple more courses outside of that department. And so that really is the advantage of this, is giving you some other perspectives, additional training, but then is also acknowledged in your transcript formally. So you can use this as you go forward in your career, saying you have this formal training that's documented here in your transcript in clinical and translational science. For those who are looking for the postdoc application, those with research degrees are not required to have further courses than the 2 core courses. If you have an MD or other professional degree, you are required to be in a research degree program, such as the Master's of Medical Science or Master of Public Health, or there could be others as well. So the next section takes us to the actual application process. So I just wanted to pause here again and see if there's any questions about any of the material that I've covered so far. All right. Well, let's talk then about the application process. So the first part of that is a letter of intent, which is due in early October. For this RFA release in September of 2020, that date is October 6th. The letter of intent is a form on REDCap, and the link is in the RFA. And the purpose of this letter is, first of all, to let the program staff know that you are intending to apply for the TL1, so that we can organize the study section that will review the grants. And I'll say more about the study section to understand why we need to have this information. It's also so that you can go through the eligibility checklist and be sure that you are eligible. So there might be in some cases where you go through it and find, and in fact, you're not eligible and we never even get the letter of intent. Other cases, we'll sort of review your responses to that and make sure that everything is in order there. But in particular for us, we need to know who is applying so we can get that study section organized. It does have some questions about the kind of research you're doing. And then just as part of the eligibility criteria. Then the full application is due in early to mid-December. In the case of this 2020 RFA, it's due on December 14th. Again, it's a online REDCap form to which you'll upload a PDF document of your research and training plans. So The form asks you for various names, things, your name, address, ERA Commons name if you have it, your ORCID ID, which the NIH is now requiring for training grant holders. So if you don't have an ORCID ID, there's instructions in the RFA about how to get that. It's very simple. Various other questions. Then the documents you'll be uploading will have a career development plan, a research plan, as well as then supporting material, bio sketches, a letter of support, a signature page. So let me review some of these components. I see there was a question in the chat. If a postdoc transitions to a faculty role during their program, are they no longer eligible to participate? Yes, that I believe that would be. I believe that would be the case, yes, because you would no longer be serving as a postdoc, but then as a faculty position. So you can hold the TL1 until such a happy circumstance takes place. So in terms then of the personal statement, it's asking you to talk about who you are, why you've chosen a research career, what's your previous research experience, and how you believe this training program will change the trajectory of your career or enhance the movement toward your goals. In fact, so why are you applying for TL1 as opposed to a different training grant? Why is this particular one important to you, valuable to you? How will this training benefit what your plans are, your goals are for your research career? Then you proceed to the career development plan. Note this is a career development grant. It's not just a research grant. So what are the gaps in your training that this program will help fill? And how will you fill those gaps? Be as specific as possible in how you present that. How will you also meet the NIH requirements for instruction in the responsible conduct of research, which trainees are supposed to have at various stages of their career? And there is a page in the RFA which gives a list of various courses and other opportunities for meeting that RCR training requirement. Many of you have probably already taken some of those courses in your graduate career, and if that's the case, you should highlight that in your application. Note that in the graduate, postgraduate, postdoc, and early faculty stages of your career development, the NIH likes you to have some sort of training in responsible conduct of research every 4 years. So if you took this training very early in your graduate career, especially your postdoc, you're probably due for some new training. So that's all outlined in the RFA. So look at those things and address this in your application. I should mention too that often trainees will have they use a chart to kind of show what their timelines are for taking particular courses or other kinds of training programs as part of their career development plan. So it's outlined very clearly for the study section to see what your training program is and your training goals. Then there is the research plan part of the application, where you'll talk about the significance of your research problem, provide some specific aims, which should be framed as an hypothesis, present the methods, including a list too of milestones and benchmarks for success that anticipate to achieve those aims. And then any references which are not included in the page count. One point that the RFA highlights is that the NIH and the CCTS are emphasize the integration of special populations, which are, you have a number of multiple groups or communities that are underrepresented in clinical and translational research. I think the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted not only the health disparities in terms of populations that are especially impacted by, negatively impacted by the disease, but also then the concern, the need to make sure that various diverse groups are included in vaccine trials, for example, to make sure that vaccines are safe and effective for all populations. And so, as I say, our current situation has really highlighted the importance of looking to various people that have not always been included in research studies, in clinical research. And also thinking about the, how your research might impact health disparities, health equities going forward. I mean, it may be 5, 10 years from now. It may not be what you're, maybe other people have to pick up the ball, as it were, from you, but what would be the impact of your research as it is implemented, as your discoveries are implemented in treating human health? How will that help in various populations? Now, this is not, in terms of integrating these populations into your research, is not a scored category, but we're just you're encouraged to think about how your research could impact or and could include these groups. Just pause and see if there's any questions in the chat. I don't see any. Then there's a section about your mentor. Note this is a mentored career development grant. You have a lead mentor who guides and encourages the design and execution of your research project and also provides you with career development counseling. And so that is also part of the training plan that you are presenting. There are also 2 additional mentors that are complementary to the interests of the lead mentor. So one of your mentors must be from a different department than you are, and that choice should reflect a skill building purpose that's discussed in the career development and mentoring plans. This person brings something to the table, a skill that you don't have, a perspective that you don't have. The mentoring team should have at least one clinician, and it should have someone who is either a population-focused or lab-based researcher. So these are 3 descriptions of mentors that have to be spread among the 3 mentors. Presumably your lead mentor is probably your dissertation advisor, and this is probably in your department. So probably it's a different mentor who fulfills that first application. But sure, your mentor may fill that second or the third qualification. So it's these are not to say one mentor is this, the other mentor is that, the other mentor is the third. These are just split, divided in some way over the various people on your mentoring teams. There's a question about the letter of intent. Does it require anything from the lead mentor? We do ask for the lead mentor's name, in part because it helps us to organize the study section and understand that that person can't be assigned to review your grant. So that might be the person we immediately think of because we know they're an expert in your field. So, but there's no letter or the documentation from the mentors at the letter of intent stage. Okay, some other parts of the application, current advising report, and the RFA has instructions where you find that on Buckeye link. We do this for a doctoral transcript for the postdocs. This can just be, if you've got one, just scan it in, put it with your PDF package. You don't have to ask for one from your doctoral to granting institution, have it mailed in a sealed envelope to us, something like that. So you presumably already have a copy of that handy. So just, as I say, scan that, put it in your PDF packet. NIH biosketches are required for you, and note that there are pre- and postdoctoral fellowship forms for the biosketch. So there's a link to the biosketch webpage at NIH. So follow that link and then look through and find the appropriate form. And then we also have biosketches from each of the members of your mentoring team as well. And I would point out, as you probably know from working with biosketches, there is a personal statement in the biosketch. So try and think about that as an extra tool that you can use. So don't just cut and paste your personal statement for the TL1 into the NIH biosketch. You can include some information from that, but your personal statement for the TL1 should be really very specific to the goals of that particular research project and this training plan. But there might be some other experiences you've had in research or other things that you can then highlight in the personal statements in the biosketch. So you can use that to kind of add some extra depth, extra context to your application and further make the case for funding you. Then we also ask for a letter of support from your lead mentor. And that letter should reflect what is discussed in the mentoring plan and the training plan and even the research plan. So study section, is looking to see that there is some connection between what the mentor is saying and what's been talked about in your application so far. That indicates there's actual and good mentoring going on. Then there's a signature page where you sign, your lead mentor will sign, and then, like I say, here's department chair, it's our program chair, someone like that then also provides support, understands that you're applying for this grant and what, its implications will be. These people are busy, so don't wait till the last minute to do that. Particularly for department chairs or program chairs, might reach out to assistants and find out what their schedules are and get something on the books to get that signed. So any questions about the application process? Well, let me talk a little more about the study section. I mentioned that we want to have this letter of intent in order to help us put together a study section. That's because we draw members of the study section from across the health sciences colleges at Ohio State, because each of your grants will be read by 3 reviewers. And the first reviewer is particularly chosen for having an expertise in your area of science, so they can give a good quality scientific review. The second reader will be someone who is in that area. They may not be quite as close to the research as that first reviewer is. And then the third reader reads the whole proposal, but is specifically tasked with paying attention to the career development and mentoring aspects of the application. And then these readers use an NIH critique form for T and F awards to evaluate your application, and they provide scores to each of the sections of the grant, and then also an overall score. And they're scored using the NIH's 1 to 9 point scale. And study section members are encouraged to use the entire scale. In fact, the study section chair usually tells them to think about start reading each grant as a 5, as a good, and then that's kind of your benchmark. This is what it is, and then as you read it, decide, no, this is actually a 3 or a 2, or hopefully not an 8 or a 9. And how are you evaluated? Well, on on you yourself as a trainee, not only your background, but also then what you're expecting to get out of the TL1 program, why this is important for you to be funded, and that gets us to your training plan, also to the quality of your mentors, and then also to your research, including the clinical and or translational aspects of it. And one thing I have noticed in attending these study sections is that sometimes you get applications that are, well, they have a number of problems. It could be they're overly ambitious. The research is much too complicated to actually be completed in the time allowed for. Or it's very unorganized in the presentation. Or there's lots of errors, typos and other kinds of errors in the presentation, or some combination of those things. And so naturally, readers comment on these things, and that makes them, they're commenting on the trainee who has done this application, which seems overly ambitious or has problems. But they very quickly move to the mentors. They say, where was the mentor in this? Did anybody look at this application before it was turned in? And if they didn't, that suggests there really isn't an ongoing mentoring relationship here. And this is a mentored career development grant, and therefore the score goes down. So what that should tell you here is that, and emphasize to you, is that all of these things, you as a trainee, your training plan, your research plan, your mentoring plan, these are all looked at together as an integrated whole. And that's what gets you an overall score, really, is how well all these things fit together. They're expecting you to have relationships with your mentors, certainly with your lead mentor, and to have an ongoing relationship that's fed into this plan. They expect that the training plan will present things that will impact your research and improve that research. That the research fits well with your own particular professional goals. So all of these things are looked at as a whole. There's not one of these that's really scored higher than the other, and really the overall fit is what really makes for a high quality application. So the study section will be meeting in the winter, probably sometime in February 2021, and their recommendation then will go to the CCTS Executive Committee, which meets a couple of times each month, which will then actually vote to recommend the winners their grants, and then you'd be notified after that for the start date, which comes in mid-August 2021. It should be August 15th. It kind of varies around the dates of the graduate school appointment dates. But August 15th, 2021 will be the start date for this next program. And that concludes the formal part of my presentation. And you can see my contact information there. And at this point, I will stop sharing the screen so I can see a whole bunch of black boxes, but I am here to answer any questions, so feel free to put them in the chat or just unmute yourself and come forward with any questions that you might have. Oh, nice question about the NIH loan repayment program. That does not make you ineligible. And then that's an interesting question, is an application more competitive as a 2-year versus a 1-year? Most of them are 2-year applications. I would not say it would necessarily make you less competitive. Maybe if you make it compelling, if you've got, as we talked about the requirements was being looked at, you as a trainee, your mentoring plan, your research, your career development plan was not specifically referencing a a timeline. So if those are all really good and all compacted into a year, that would not necessarily then make you uncompetitive. So I think I would focus more on the quality of what you're proposing to do during the time that you're applying for. We do have, we only have funding for 5 slots. So, and they're kind of on a cycle. So typically there's 1 postdoc slot open each year. And then typically 1 to 2 predoc slots open, kind of depending on where people are in that 2-year cycle. Actually, let me think. So I believe, this competition, I believe we'll be looking at probably 1 predoctoral trainee and 1 postdoctoral trainee to fund. Other questions? Again, please, you can unmute if you'd like to speak your question, but you can also put it in the chat there. Any questions? Just a moment longer for questions. And if there aren't any, I will release you. I will be sending out these slides to you so you can have them. And my contact information is in there. So feel free to reach out to me in the course of your application and let me know if you have any questions. So I thank you all for attending. I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope that you will all be sending in an application for the TL1 Mentored Career Development Grant. So thank you all, and hope you all have a good rest of your day.